Good morning. In the paper that I will present, I will demonstrate through the proposal of translation of written by Lauretta Sebastianelli il bossolo how the translation and translator exist in an indistinguishable condition. I will start with a brief literary excursus where I'll show you what is a novel and which are subgenres and genres as opposed to it. Modern literature was born out of the preferences and interests of an emerging social class, the middle class. This class was not born off or tied to the court, where much of literature had previously centered around, came from, and focused on. The novel was a vehicle for this new class of people who had different values in a never-changing world. The modern novel can be seen as the bourgeois novel, and many see the publication of Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote de la Mancha as the birth of the modern novel. There are several subgenres of novels such as the romance novel, the adventure novel, and the mystery or crime novel. The crime novel is what interests us particularly, where the story develops on crime investigation and its roles of victim, murderer, investigator. The paper that we are going to analyze, however, is actually an anti-novel, a genre born of an entertains and fears of new scientific discoveries that lend societies to create a deliberately provocative genre. Anti-novel is no longer characterized by the hero, but by the anti-hero, that is, the hero seen as a common man who assumes vicious and negative traits, but it's never moved by heavy feeling. The anti-crime novel is a subgenre of anti-novel where the stylistic and narrative rules of the crime novel are completely distorted. Having clarified this, we see how translation is possible through the figures of translator. So now we imagine that I am in Madrid on vacation. Since I'm thirsty and I would like a drink, I stop in a coffee shop and ask for agua, which in English I would call water. The waiters bring me exactly what I ordered, a cup of water. What I would expect. I can therefore affirm that the word agua is the Spanish equivalent of the water in English. Now we will analyze a more complicated example, a text in Italian from the Bertold by Alessandro Manzoni. To have a correct translation, the translator must follow a process which can be synthesized in 3 steps. Reading the search language, understanding the original text, and seeing almost the same things in the target language. So now we have a correct translation. These 2 examples demonstrate that the translation not only exists, but is it possible and has an utilitarian function. But who is the professional figure who carries out the act of translating? The translator. Very common is the misunderstanding. We have it with a superficial reception of the text, either through reading or listening. But one must be aware, of course, that the language is not always explicitly defined, that at times its meaning is indeed ambiguous or open to interpretation. Some linguists, like the French André Martinet, claim that this condition of language is ineliminable, and a pure linguistic community cannot exist. He lays out 4 points which explain the possible limits to this linguistic community. Interpretation of the text is the initial step of any translation, whereby linguistic knowledge allows the translator to assign to word X common meanings, X1 and X2, and one more with a common meaning, X3. We need to understand the expressive function of the word through the context, which is not known a priori, but is known through the word that explains it. Beyond the single word and the context, there is a third element to insert, the intertext element, or rather the situation to which the text is linked. At least we confirm that the translator doesn't translate the language but the text, that's the practical use of it. There are different fields of specialization in translation, such as scientific translation, juridic translation, readjustment of dialogues and localization, and editorial translation. The editorial translator or literary translator is in charge of translating and readjusting the editorial works, usually from a given language to another language. Of paramount importance in the editorial translation is a proficient knowledge of linguistic, grammatical, and syntactic elements in conjunction with paralinguistic knowledge. The proposal is a written document and it contains analysis of the text read. Okay, now we can talk about my editorial proposal. La Valle de Bronze is a work by the novelist Lauretta Sebastianelli, published in 2016 by the publisher I Sognatori. According to my analysis based on the previous notion, the book in question can be categorized as a drama dismissed as an anti-crime novel, because it completely abandoned the crime novel rules. For example, the story immediately presents us the killer and the murder weapon, while it hides the victim and the reason. I mark it like a drama disguised as an anti-crime novel because the killer is moved by a feeling of love that even confuses her to the point of having to choose clearly who will be her victim. So let's see as an inquired love pushed Victoria, our protagonist, to organize a murder that until the last moment confuses her because she doesn't know who will be her victim. The book begins with a prologue in media res, where the protagonist tells us the moment she buys a gun and a bullet. Then follows a very complex narrative time because the story develops on two different timelines, which are joined in the penultimate chapter, while the ending is characterized by an epilogue that leads us to years after the event, showing us how the life of the protagonist has changed. Victoria is a typical anti-hero of the anti-novel because she missed, make wrong choice, even kills, but she's not moved by evil feeling. Love is one of the three main themes. We meet it for the first time with the description of the relationships between Victoria and P, which is the love of her life with her. She shared a pure and true love for 10 years. The second theme is the choice, and let's see how the choice is really difficult for our protagonist, who seems almost to be carried away by events without ever actually choosing. The final theme is the theme of death. Victoria decides to face death directly, making us understand from the beginning that she has control of someone's life. We meet the theme of love again with Irina, but we see that this love is a one-way feeling, an unrequited love, a sick love. Also, as mentioned above, the whole story is driven by an unrequited feeling of love. This leads us to say that Irina is a co-protagonist in the story, because without her, there would be no development. In conclusion, I can affirm that with this work I have demonstrated the indisputable existence of translation, and consequently of the professional figure of the translator, that is extremely necessary as a scholar of linguistics, which deals with putting in contact two or more different cultures. Thank you for attention.